As part of staying true to our value of we care, the MarketStar Foundation is expanding our readership program. Through the New Readers Are Leaders initiative, we will be donating 10,000 books to over 4,000 students across 9 schools. These books will be owned by the students to take home this summer, along with literacy information for their families to help make reading fun together. Using the link in the episode description, you are invited to share an inspiring message that encourages students to build a habit of daily reading. Your message will be printed on a reading log placed inside the cover of each book donated by our program. The deadline for submissions is April 29th. Together, we can empower growth through literacy. And now, enjoy the show. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Living the Six podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you so much for the response to episode 1. It was really fantastic hearing everyone's feedback. We hope you continue to enjoy the show, and we definitely think you'll enjoy this episode. I'm Steve Schwartzman. Of course, I'm here with our co-host, Nicole Fisher. Nicole, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Well, we have a fantastic episode in line. We're excited. We thought it would be a great opportunity to have what we're calling a bit of a roundtable today with the Women in Business organization, one of, I would say, the most vital and impactful organizations we have here at MarketStar. We have 3 guests with us today. First, Director of Client Services and now officially the current chair for Women in Business, Shae Hill. Shae, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Steve. We're excited to be here today.
We've also got Manager of Executive Engagement and the Communications Council Chair for Women in Business, Antoinette Martin. Thanks again for joining us, Antoinette.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Definitely. Also, very excited to have our LATAM Programs Director and Communications Co-Chair, Ariadne Donis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. So as we had said, I mean, the focus of our discussion here is to discuss our new purpose and values in a unique and dynamic way, and also to allow the company to get to know members of the MarketStar family, as well as the organizations that run under it, which is why we were really excited to have the opportunity to talk about women in business, to discuss its impact, to discuss plans that you as a group and organization and as a leadership team have in play. So I think jumping in and getting to know women in business a little bit, what really is it about the organization as a whole that I suppose brings out passion for each of you? What is it that you're passionate about with women in business and are willing to put in the extra time and effort that makes it impactful?
So, Steve, one of the main things of why I've been engaged with our Women in Business initiatives from the very beginning, when they first started to grow at MarketStar, I believe so much in the potential and the power that comes with diversity and with strong men and women in every part of our organization. And being involved in the Women in Business and watching our women as they grow in their careers and as they take on tough assignments and as they raise the tough questions and challenge each other and our leadership teams, that honestly is one of the best parts of my day. And so I'm involved in Women in Business because I believe in the power and potential of every single one of our women in the organization to create change in their own worlds and within our company and within our community. And just being a part of that and watching them grow, it brings me an intense amount of satisfaction and helps to balance out some of the hard things that we have to do for our day jobs. And so being able to see that growth and that power and that potential just come to life with our people is what keeps me going and what keeps me connected to this resource group.
Some of the things Antoinette said, there's a lot of value in the chaos of the roles that we're in every day, having the ability to watch people grow. I think leaders are leaders for the right reasons when they're focused on, we call it service-based leadership, right? And empowering others. For me, there's another layer that's a little bit of a unique perspective and maybe not something that you would expect, from someone who's overseeing this committee over the next couple of years. And it really ties back to the fact that I don't feel like I haven't had a negative impact in my career because I'm a woman. I've had fantastic leaders from before MarketStar and through MarketStar. But as I was debating on whether or not to step into this focus and really drive different opportunities for the women and the men within MarketStar, I was I was forced to reflect on some of the experiences that I've had that quite frankly are unprofessional from how I've been treated in scenarios, not because I've lost opportunities to become a leader, but because of how I've been approached or invited to events or feeling insecure about travel because I'm a woman and being alone. I've got lots of fun stories there, but I think that women are expected to be in scenarios that are comfortable for men. I think that our women are expected to play in, air quotes, the good boys club, but that's just not the reality of the world anymore. And so for me, it's layering on the fact that we get to empower women to do really cool things, as well as men to support and build those relationships. And then also to help continue evangelizing how we support women and what's needed in the workplace to create good experiences for them.
That actually leads into another question. And Ariadne, you can jump in at any time. Knowing the experiences that have all led us to be so proud of women in business and us as a group forging, and continuing the conversation, how do you think the conversation around women in business has changed over the last few years in your direct experience?
It has changed a lot. And let me talk to you a little bit about my experience in LATAM. So running business in LATAM could be sometimes kind of different from how we are running business in the US. And from my perspective now, women are more powerful than ever before. We are able to accomplish a lot of tasks and a lot of positions within a company. We have a lot of talent, and how women are getting prepared to take over a lot of responsibilities now, not only women, but also men who are there to support these women and to empower them as well. So we have a lot of people that is trying to change the world, that is trying to give more opportunities for a lot of people that has been preparing the whole life to take a manager position or take a leadership positions. In the last few years, I have seen a lot of change, at least in the Latin countries that I am working with.
I love that perspective, Ariadne, and it reminds me of just the evolution that we've seen within our own Women in Business group over the last 7 years. Right? We started out with a focus on creating connection and an opportunity for our women to meet with each other and to better understand each other and develop their network so that they knew more about themselves and about MarketStar. And it's evolved to having hard conversations around unconscious bias and gender bias and looking at how we need to increase our diversity, but then also how we need to be thinking about the hard skills that we're missing out on, right? There's over the decades before now, there's always been this perspective of, oh, well, women need coaching on the soft skills. And the research over the last decade has shown that women are actually very strong in soft skills, but where we often, especially when you look at leadership opportunities, where we often fall short is that we don't have that formal training in financial management, or we don't have that formal training or those experiences around how to do data analytics or how to critically look at different problems. And so just that awareness, both within the global culture as well as within MarketStar, how that's evolved, that's been a significant change that I've noticed that has enabled some really good, hard conversations.
I really like that. Thinking about how each of us has our own wildly different experiences, how have your particular experiences shaped how you're approaching the Women in Business Committee and how it's being run? And a better way of asking that question might be, what can we expect to see this year that might be different from other years?
That's a really powerful question, Nicole, and I think there's a lot of different ways to go with it. But my perspective is that our experiences really start with our story long before we get here. And I'll give you my own personal example in that. When I introduced myself to the Women in Business Committee group back in January timeframe, I believe it was, I needed them to understand that what people see on paper, especially in business, is what appears on LinkedIn, or, what we choose to post in social media, or, even what's evangelized within our own internal communications. That can be representative of a lot of different things, but what it doesn't always do is help each individual person within that company, especially the new individual to the organization that's hot off the streets. This is their first career job. They're figuring life out. They don't always understand that there's a past and a story that allowed these people to get where they are. And for me, I mean, that goes all the way back to, childhood and having experiences of a mom who worked 2 or 3 jobs to make a great, life for her kids, and, a father for a period of time that kind of disappeared due to drug use, and having really hard conversations and learning how to be direct with people at a really, really young age, all the way to, really cool experiences in college and living on your own and having to figure out how to pay your bills without any support. And, each of these unique opportunities and people who touch your lives, all the way to who's in that circle today. And I look at, like, my husband is a great example, who continues to push me to be more open and communicative about things like emotions, because that's not a place that I naturally live, and helping to connect with people in different ways. Those are the stories that I think bring us to what we're hoping to accomplish really in women in business this year. And there's a couple of big things that for me I'm very, very passionate about. And I know Antoinette and Ari are also very passionate about different things. But one of them in the world that I live in is, how do we create and connect on a truly deep, authentic level and allow people to understand those stories so that they can feel empowered to do these amazing, cool things that they want, right? That doesn't mean they want to be a leader necessarily or take on different types of roles. They may want to do something completely different, and it's our responsibility to get them there, all through the opportunity to learn really great tactical business application. And when you can mirror and meet those two things together, you create some very powerful opportunities for individuals who maybe didn't feel like they had them before. And to me, that's really where my passion lives in this conversation and what I think we're trying to accomplish. Antoinette, you are so instrumental, and you and I can't even count how many hours of conversations about this. What is your perspective there?
So Shae, this is, as you well know, right? This is my passion topic, because to your point, we all come with our own stories. And I used to call it baggage, right? And then as I got older and started to appreciate the complexity of everyone's story, I stopped calling it baggage, because baggage is what holds us back. And when we acknowledge the fact that all of these things contribute to our story and give us an opportunity to create change or to be better or to change the narrative, right? Like, I grew up in a household where I knew I was loved, but I was never good enough, right? I brought home a 4.0 and my dad asked me, why didn't I get a 4.5? And I'm like, well, Dad, they don't give 4.5s. Right. And I was good at this, but why wasn't I better? Right. And that shaped me in my career and how I approach so many things. And to Shae's point, when we are truly able to be authentic with each other, we're able to have those conversations, and then we're able to understand each other. And it's at that point of understanding that a whole new world opens up, and we can be truly, to Shae's point, our authentic selves and connect on a level that actually creates growth, right? It creates growth for us. It creates growth for our families. It changes the narrative. But if I've never been able to connect with someone on that authentic level and tell them my story, then I can't unlock that, and I can't change the narrative that I grew up with, right? Because why did my dad do that to me? It's because that was his experience as a kid, and he was never able to unlock that, right? And there are things that we don't want to perpetuate down through the next generations, or even into our leadership roles or with our friendships and with our community. So when Shae articulated a focus on that authenticity, I was so excited, because it is that opportunity to connect and unlock the future by owning our stories and just saying, you know what, it's not baggage, it's my story. And it's what makes me who I am, and who I authentically am matters. And I can create growth and change.
I really, really love this perspective on authentic connection and being your authentic self. In terms of finding that authentic connection, how do you differ authentic with inauthentic connection? And if, there's an individual that wants to personally develop that for themselves, be a part of that improvement, and thus helping themselves to to support and lift the community. What, from your perspective, are things they could look out for, or a good place to get started to evolve and improve in that day-to-day mindset?
Sometimes the way that I handle my leadership, and I remember back in the days, like 5 years ago, when I took over the whole LATAM operations, and I remember one colleague mentioned, "Hey, you are going to do this like this former director or like this one." And I said, "No, I am going to do this like Ariadne." So this is the Ariadne way. And this is what I try to tell my colleagues and to my teams, always to empower them to make decisions, to go ahead and go for it anytime they need to. I'm going to be there to support, of course, but make their own paths. I think that as soon as when I am so transparent to them and I try to be really honest of who I am, obviously we are talking about metrics or whatever, but I like to connect really in a personal way with them. And they come really, really honest. They come in and they say, "Hey, Ariadne, I want to accomplish this or that." And they know that they can trust me, and they know that they will have someone at least just to hear and be there for them anytime they need. So I think when we empower our colleagues, our teams, our communities in that way, just to pursue their dreams or what they need, what they want, the most important way to help others.
That's fantastic. I think, something you'd noted is to be completely honest and to be transparent with how people are feeling. I think I had a supervisor once who told me that the worst thing you could tell me is what I want to hear. Our interactions, our one-on-one time, there's no point in playing that lip service. If there's something off kilter, or even if there's just something completely out of the direction which we were planning on talking about, let's dive in on that, because that's where growth and improvement and support really does happen. And I remember at the time that having an impact on me, and I could very well see Ariadne, a very similar impact for those whom you've had these discussions with. In transitioning on this discussion, then obviously our real goal at the podcast is to really better understand the purpose and values at MarketStar as much as we can. In hearing the trajectory of women in business, and hearing the many perspectives and the many different, I think, the direction and the vision that you're carrying on, and it's very inspiring. How would you say the rollout of the purpose and values has affected the evolution of the women in business as an organization from your perspectives?
Antoinette, I have some ideas, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, considering you were part of the committee last year when it actually rolled out, and I've come in a little bit after that fact.
Well, nice pass, Shae. I was just going to say, hey, Shae, you want to take that one? I'm happy to give that historical perspective. So, Steve, from the very first time that I heard about our new values coming out, which was November of 2019. Oh, I was so excited, because they truly reflect who we are as a company, and they're measurable, they're specific. We can quickly identify when someone is living them. So, but what did that mean to women in business? Because that's your question, right? I think what that meant to women in business is that we were able to say it's okay to talk about the hard things, because we care. And if we don't care authentically, then we're just saying, yeah, you're fine. Hey, Steve, you got a little something in your mustache, right? That's caring, rather than saying in our heads, oh, Steve has part of his lunch in his mustache, right? And that's just a very superficial example, but it goes down to that level. And as we looked at how we focused our energy for women in business coming into 2021, and looking at those opportunities to create that authentic connection. Why did we do that? Because we care, because we know that our people matter, and that we have to be leaders that amplify across the business at all times. And we know that our people are all in every day as much as they possibly can be. So it enabled us to have broader conversations around what we truly wanted to do, which is to elevate and lift each other, right? And not just elevate and lift the women, but elevate and lift our male allies and our sponsors, because we're able to truly connect and talk about our experiences authentically in terms of these values.
So I'll give you the more red personality answer to the question, because one thing that I love about the committee that we have in place today is there's a lot of polarizing perspectives. Antoinette is very much a little bit more of the blue connection personality, right? So you're always going to hear a lot of that on that front. And this is where, for me, balancing that as I came into this group and this role, if you look at the objectives that we'll talk about in our kickoff in just a couple of weeks, there's two primary ones, and they really they do tie back into the values, but they also tie back to the greater MarketStar purpose, which is to create growth. So the first objective is to facilitate business skill development to create individual growth. And the second is to empower growth through connection, right? And so when we looked at how do we leverage the values, we absolutely have to consider the realities, and it's in our mission for this year, next year, around, belonging and authentic connection and, leveraging internal and external communities. That is all very much there. But there's also this very realistic aspect to what we're trying to accomplish this year is not only are we expanding those networks, but in order for people to create growth in their careers and become masters of their craft and to really feel like they can be all in every day, we have to arm them with really true experiences that give them opportunity to go sit down for that interview and present themselves well, or to take the role they're in currently, understand how it applies to a bigger picture, and then be empowered to go look at a completely different business unit or operational function that they never knew existed and explore that. And that's a really powerful thing for people to do when you start layering in some of these other conversations and what we're trying to accomplish with women in business this year, so that it doesn't just result in feel-good moments, it results in actual progress. And Antoinette mentioned the measurable metrics of the values. We want measurable metrics of women in business. We want to know that women are being promoted, because right now our female perspective is the lightest at the top, right? And that's executive all the way down to the sales manager level, but also in a lot of our support organizations. And, I think there's a lot of history that ties into how young women go through school and education, but that financial acumen, the data analytics pieces that Antoinette mentioned earlier. So we're really focusing on how do we drive all of that together. Yes, we are trying to boil the ocean, but we're doing it tactfully. So we'll get a lot done this year, and then hopefully have some really cool things to roll out even for 2022 already.
MarketStar is supporting all employees in becoming masters of their craft by providing free, unlimited access to LinkedIn Learning. There are over 16,000 available courses, and this week we wanted to highlight just one. The Grow Your Impact as a Mentor Learning Path is a collection of 13 courses designed to help you communicate with empathy, provide persuasive coaching, and of course mentor others. Course topics cover an array of skills, including professional networking, growth mindset, and managing stress for positive change. Each course ranges anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes and comes with their own direction, lesson plan, and exercise files, all for you to take advantage of on your own time. Whether you're a leader looking to take someone under your wing or a mentee looking to define and achieve professional goals, these courses will provide you a fantastic foundation from which to build your skills. You can access the Grow Your Impact as a Mentor learning path by clicking the link in the episode description. We can't wait for you to experience this learning path as you continue to create growth with LinkedIn Learning.
You actually touched on a topic that I have been itching to get to, Shae, and I'm glad you brought it up. So with the climate around our female perspectives, and there's a couple unique ways that the last year has affected that. I remember your conversation earlier, I believe this month even, we talked about how COVID had a particularly disproportionate effect on women in business. And I wanted to kind of address that with the group. We all know that COVID had some pretty detrimental effects in resulting in a lot of voluntary leaving of the workforce in women compared to men, and just job loss in general. And my question would be, what kind of program, like Women in Business, this committee right now, do for current employees that have not had that happen to them, but also make it a welcoming place to perhaps encourage women to come back into the fold and jumpstart their careers again.
Let me throw a couple of those statistics out, Nicole, because I think it's a really good foundation for this part of the conversation. So if you go look at some different things out there, McKinsey and Oxford Economics is probably one of the better places to start. They posted a few things, just as you mentioned a couple months ago. There's two that are really important. Number one, unemployment numbers back in February of 2020 were equal roughly for men and women, right? So if you go back a little over a year, unemployment was pretty equal. Today, the female workforce has already dropped to 57%, which is in fact the lowest level since 1988. So if you think about that, that's potentially 30 years of progression that we have lost because of the impacts of COVID. I think that there's one other thing that was really interesting that I saw as I was researching this, and it's this thought that, men will be back to, normal levels within, the next 6 months or something. And they thought women would be, lagging 6 to 8 months behind. But I think that's really overly ambitious based on what we're seeing, even in the talent pools as we're trying to recruit and hire. And so if you look at what causes that, there are aspects tied to, just historical male and female roles and family dynamics and, who's going to get the kids to school and who's going to do the homeschooling and where does that line play. There's that, persona categorization that starts in early childhood all the way through college that we have to battle on where women play in these roles and what those expectations should be, as well as just this reality. I mean, you called out women just in the workforce, why would they be enticed to come to MarketStar, or any company at that point? And the fact that they get lower wage jobs early on, so they're not as experienced coming into the workforce, which minimizes their career growth. So I wanted to lay that out there because I think it's really important to understand the context. And when we look at how women in business is working to empower that, number one, I don't think it's just women in business, it's MarketStar as a whole, in the way that we have, as a company, created benefits and opportunities that allow women to now have balance in things like childcare, specifically on the cost of childcare. The work from home environment creates a lot of that flexibility that maybe wasn't there before. So I think we've been able to more recently retain more women. We certainly had, big impact early on. But when I look at the bigger picture, giving not just women, but men, right? I think we have to make sure we're balancing the conversation that we have to create understanding within our company. If women in business is the avenue in which we do that, then fantastic. And it definitely will be a huge anchoring point for it. But we have to help our men understand the different challenges that women are facing so that they know how to support them through those. But at the same time, we have to teach our leaders as a whole to support men and women because there are different challenges that come up on both sides of that token. And so, I know that's not an extremely specific answer. I think it's different here in the US too, as it is in LATAM. So, Ari, you may have a different perspective.
Thank you, Shae. Absolutely. So in LATAM, unemployment due to COVID went really, really, really high. It's different rates in every country, but it's really, really high. And yes, the most of the people that lost their jobs was women because they had to take care of children and they have to take care of the home and whatever reasons you might think. So I think here in Women in Business, and I love to be part of this and the diversity that we are creating here is because we need to evangelize in other regions, our men, to understand and how they can be proactive, helping. I don't like to say helping because actually home chores and everything should be equally for women and men, but let's say help with house chores and everything, and to support women in business and how they are doing their jobs and with children and everything. So one of the most important things that we are trying to do is to create this kind of education within our communities, not only with MarketStar employees, but we try to expand this information to the rest of the communities in countries or whatever organizations we might have some network with. It will be great to help our people to understand the new role of a woman in the business.
You're actually making me think of this amazing book that kind of outlines what each of you just said. It's called Overwhelmed: Work, Love, and Play When No One Has the Time by Bridget Schultz. And that book is one that totally, completely changed my perspective because not only did it kind of read back to me what I was already thinking about the state of the world and women in business and things like that. And women traditionally have the lion's share of the household, running the house, and all that implies with children, with appointments, with everything that doesn't actually pertain. Everything else that your significant other or your male significant other would have in the house, the rest is for the woman. I mean, the husband usually takes care of, being the breadwinner, things like that. Well, now that's completely changed, but we also have to look at like what that has done to make that an easier environment, unfortunately, for women to make them leave the working world, where Shae, you were mentioning at how, pre the 80s, we're now back there, unfortunately. But when women started becoming breadwinners and have careers and things like that around that time, now this book sort of outlines like, okay, now what? What does the future have in store for policies in the workplace that are equitable for men and women to support careers, but also family life, and that splitting of the mental load with childcare, with household maintenance, things like that, and all that comes, lifestyle wise with that is really outlined well in this book, because it describes ways that, splitting the difference or, equitable sharing of that mental load that I mentioned is really well done. But I think with the way that the business world is operating right now, due to COVID and work from home, that whole paradigm shift is so interesting to me now, because it's almost like we can sort of accelerate those discussions about how we can make a return to work easier for everyone. And that goes for women as well. So hopefully in these coming months, even in this year, as businesses get more comfortable with working from home where they traditionally were in offices, or more comfortable with work-life balance that's more suitable for family life and things like that. And Steve, you have a good perspective here because your family is growing right now as well. So in addition to all those policies and conversations that are changing, the distribution and equitable distribution of work and responsibility and stuff like that being shared with men, and men need to have a definite part of it, definitely a seat at the table for that. It describes all these things that should be just as valuable to men as it is to women, such as things like family planning, maternity, paternity leave, things like that. And so working from home and making sure that the kids are taken care of can now be a shared responsibility.
Absolutely. This is actually a conversation my spouse and I had recently, which is that growing up, I don't remember hearing about even the term of paternity leave. Usually it was maternity leave. And in a lot of ways, it was set aside for almost medical healing time, things like that. Obviously, I don't have the perspective of someone who's physically birthed a child, so I'm not going to try and say what their perspective is on it. But I think one thing that is supportive in seeing paternity in that instance being more commonplace in many workplaces is it allows, I would say from my perspective, men less compartmentalizing their lives between work and family, and that these are my hours that I've got to focus on this. These are my hours that I've got to focus on that. And it's really about having a flexible perspective of what is needed right now and what's that support that's there, and to allow that time for all employees to be able to not just be with their family, but to connect with them. I think this comes back to what we talked about at the beginning of connection is, one thing that I look at, and, I was a infant in the 80s, so I can't quite speak as well for that. But I think from those eras, a lot of times the disparity in the expectations with men when it came to, has been discussed, who's the breadwinner, who's the quote unquote nurturer, things like that. So much of it to me came down to, I think there's an expectation from what I could see to communicate more with your spouse, and to set those expectations and to understand those things, because to me, it's not just this idea that, if my spouse is taking on full-time work, I don't like this idea that some people seem to have that I'm allowing that to happen. No, this is her life and her passion, and I support her. And on the same rock, I've always been frustrated sometimes that if I'm spending time one-on-one with my son or my child, that's suddenly called babysitting to some people. And it's not that. It's me being a father. It's me being a parent. And it comes down to having that flexible perspective, like I talked about, that authentic connection where you're continuing to discuss and evaluate those things.
Steve, you called out something important, and you did as well, Nicole, that we haven't talked a lot about, but it's kind of a foundation in any program like a Women in Business, and it's the value of good mentorship. And I think that's important for men and women, but let me give you my direct experience with this. Antoinette, so there's a lot of history here, was, we'll say, lucky enough, whether she believes it or not, to be dubbed my mentor as part of an internal growth program that we have here around 6 years ago. Now, for context, I've been with my husband for 8 years now. We have a fantastic 13-year-old who I call my bonus boy. So, he's by default stepson, but by reality, mine through and through, in my opinion. And one of the things that was most valuable to me as I tried to navigate learning how to balance career and family was mentorship, was someone I could go to, in this case, specifically Antoinette, when I wasn't sure how to do those things, because she had done them and she was also doing them as a mother herself. And I think that we have to be conscious of the fact that people will always try to navigate this, and it will probably never fully go away, and that's okay. But part of what we need to do as an organization with Women in Business and other avenues in our company is empowering people to know that they have options, and then enveloping them with a community that can teach them how to do that through other experiences that they can leverage in their own personal lives. And then 100%, you have to have the support of a fantastic spouse. And mine is absolutely fantastic. And I'm so grateful for his patience as I've tried to navigate my own career, and as he does the same. And that's part of what I think can make relationships powerful, but it's certainly not easy.
So Shae, I think you call out something that I've always felt a little bit overprivileged on, right? Because you and I both have some fantastic support partners. Now, I'm not saying they were born that way or they came into our relationships that way, but they are now. But we also have a lot of our women in business and within MarketStar who are single moms or who are transgender and are struggling with creating space and feeling like they belong and have a voice in a world that is still very much centered on, oh, well, perfect life is a spouse and 2 kids and a dog and a house and a mortgage and all that fun stuff, right? It's like I recently texted our daughter, that adulting thing is overrated, right? By a long stretch. And part of our focus and goal for Women in Business this year is because we hear it repeatedly, right? Shae brings messages back from every time she does a new hire orientation to diversity in women in business with our new hires, is that there's that craving for connection, but it's not always the married woman who's lived in Utah all her life, right? It's different gender preferences. It's different ethnicities. It's people who are recently divorced and struggling to figure out, how do I manage my 3 kids and a job and an ex-partner and still do all those things and still figure out how to be me, right? All of those hard conversations. And our goal this year is to create an environment where we learn and grow our ability to have those hard conversations so that when I need my boss's attention, right, I can have the hard conversation that says, please tell me what kind of listening mode you're in today because I need your full attention, right? Or it's that conversation with our boyfriend or our girlfriend that says, I don't feel like you're pulling your part and I need help because I'm drowning, right? Being able to be authentic that way and just acknowledging that we have all these different stories, right? Going back to that conversation about stories and acknowledging that we're different. And that difference is what makes us absolutely amazing because we learn and our perspective just broadens and we're able to say, oh crap, I'm not as good as I thought I was because I just learned that I could be better. Right. And I think that's a lot of the opportunity that's been opened with the pandemic. Nicole, back to your point, is that we dealt with some really, really rough things, right? We dealt with losing friends to suicide. We dealt with relationships breaking up because of the stress in the home. And we dealt with trying not to throttle our children as they were in our space while we were trying to do our job and they were trying to do Zoom school for all those months. So I think it's important that we celebrate that diversity and that we make space for that difference and that we learn from each other and that we have the courage to say, I love that perspective. That's not mine. Can I share my perspective with you? Can I share my story?
That vulnerability is so, so important. And women in business is definitely a crucial place for that to happen because there's different types of vulnerability. And in the spirit of the you belong value, I think that aligns perfectly, right? That being able to be vulnerable opens you up to being included, because you're heard, you're validated, and everybody, you have your own unique experiences, but you can still feel together with other people, even with your unique experiences. What do you think is a kind of a surprising value that you have found while driving conversations with women in business? And we touched on you belong just now, but are there any values that are popping up in conversations that may surprise you? You would think that you belong is like the main value that, women in business operates by. What would you say others have popped up that may have surprised you?
In my case, Nicole, for our Latam team, they're surprised by the we care value because in the Latin culture, it's not really normal that the company that you're working for actually cares about you, about your career, about your community, about your growth. They are always surprised how MarketStar really cares about all the employees.
That's really great to hear, especially when there's so many different ways. And Ariadne, you over the LATAM teams, that's amazing that, people all over our offices, we're a global company and we can still connect in the same ways and still feel cared about. I think that's a huge achievement, by the way. We're a growing company and we have so many locations around the world, but these values are just so easy to connect with. And the we care value is also very, very powerful. So that definitely resonates.
We're just about getting to our time on this. I did want to make the point. One thing that I loved about this conversation, in our previous conversation on the show, the values, the nomenclature, the values very much ran the conversation. The, names, values were coming up a lot. And that did happen very much in this conversation. But what I love is that I feel like we shared, as a group, there were so many different examples and perspectives that spoke to the values without even having so much to bring them to light. And I love that. I listened to stories and examples, and I'm hearing the importance of, how are we supporting people and being all in every day? How are we executing creativity and impacts? How are we being leaders who amplify? And I love that it feels like there's such a nucleus within the Women in Business program that it's more than just we talk about the values and we have a slide for the values when we present on them. It's that it very much feels like an inner and woven fiber into the foundation you've built. And I think that's inspiring and commendable. And we did want to talk a little bit about the upcoming Women in Business event. For those listening to this as it comes out, that will be, I believe, on May 6th. Wanted to kick it out to you guys, get an opportunity to share some insight on what people within MarketStar can expect and really how everything came together.
We're really excited for the kickoff event. It's going to be simple in the sense of we're keeping it to an hour. We are focused heavily on making sure that there's a global presence with Women in Business. We didn't talk about that quite as much, but we'll be including some of our executive leadership to talk through not only, the value of women in business to them, but what they're committing for us as an organization and the support on that front. And then I'm excited. Each of our subcommittee groups will have some opportunity to share what they're working on and delivering to MarketStar this year as part of Women in Business, in addition to rolling out our greater, plan for this year and next year. So, people can understand everything from what we want to accomplish and how we want to support them getting there, as well as, how they can get involved and be, true consumers of all the great content, trainings, workshops, and especially the connections that we're trying to put in place for them.
For anyone attending the events, or anything that would be beneficial for them to do to get involved or participate leading up?
Steve, I think for everyone who's going to join that kickoff event, come with your thoughts about where you want to connect and participate, because you're going to hear this full scope of what we're undertaking for the year and all the different committees and councils that go into making this possible, and coming with a perspective on, I'm really interested in projects and I love data, right? Is there an opportunity for me to participate and connect and to learn more by being a part of women in business and participating in the committees? We've talked so much about our need to add more men and women to our committees so that we have a broader perspective. I had one of my co-chairs share the other day that when she was a brand new hire, she started to get excited about women in business and went onto the group page on Workplace. And she's like, I was so intimidated by what was being shared because it was so professional and so buttoned up. And my thought, Steve, was, oh my goodness, I created a negative experience for one of the most important people now on my committee, and also one of our most important people that actually do the work, right? And so come with your perspectives and come with an eye and a mind to say, am I interested in participating here?
Absolutely. I mean, very much this is you belong. I mean, and I feel like that's a huge message. I think that's really everything we have. Obviously, people are looking to connect with women in business on their own time. There is the Workplace group on Facebook Workplace. Is there any other encouragement you guys would give to anyone in the company as far as if they were looking to connect with someone or something and get to know the organization a little more?
Just encourage them to ask. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about working here is nobody really ever says no to helping someone find a connection or an opportunity. And so, it's really in your hands as an employee or just someone in our community externally even to raise your hand and ask for really whatever it is. That could be growth, that could be mentorship, that could be just advice on a random situation. So if you're willing to be vulnerable enough to raise your hand, you're going to find the support here.
Spread the voice. Just invite your coworkers, invite anyone on your teams to be part of the Women in Business group and Workplace. We are here for you.
Thank you so much, Shae, Antoinette, and Ariadne, for being a part of this discussion and joining us for this episode. I have just absolutely loved the experience of not only getting to know you better and getting to know women in business better, but really getting to know MarketStar as a whole, the company and values on a better level. It's been a fantastic learning experience for me. I'm absolutely sure that the MarketStar community will definitely feel the same. Nicole, is there anything else you wanted to call out before we put a bow on everything?
I just wanted to say I enjoyed everyone's perspectives here. We all have our unique experiences that tie into why we think women in business is so special. And I thank you guys for sharing your stories.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. It's been a great experience today.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of MarketStar's Living the Six podcast. We'll be back next month with new guests and topics to continue sharing stories and perspectives on MarketStar's purpose and values. Be sure to download and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and stay connected with us to let us know what you've enjoyed about the show and any thoughts on what we can do to make the listener experience even better. MarketStar employees can connect with the show on Facebook Workplace, and all listeners can contact us by emailing talentdevelopment@marketstar.com and including podcast in the subject line. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.